Hello guys, welcome to another edition of 5 Minute Fridays, and in this episode we're going to be learning about variables in JavaScript. So first things first, what are JavaScript variables? So quite simply, JavaScript variables are data storage containers. Now variables can also be thought of as name containers, so you can place data inside these containers and then refer to the data simply by naming the container. And then this data can be used repeatedly depending on whichever way you choose. So you can almost see it as when you say to yourself, I need to remember all this information later, but I only need to remember it in one word. And that's essentially what a variable is. Now in the next slide we're going to be breaking down variables into 3 different parts. So as mentioned, variables are like containers in JavaScript, and using these variables to store data is the foundation of the language. And variables are defined in 3 distinct parts. Now the first 2 parts are essentially joined together. So you declare the variable, and you do this by registering the variable and the corresponding scope using keywords, which we'll be speaking about in the next slide. And then you give it a name, and as such you've declared a variable. However, after you declare a variable, the container is empty or the declaration is empty. So that is when we bring the third part in and we assign a specified value to the variable using the assignment operator, which is an equals sign. So to declare a variable, we need a keyword. Now there are 3 ways we can declare a variable, or 3 keywords. So you've got var, let and const. Now there's a difference between the 3, but in this episode we're only going to be focused on the var keyword. But I will be creating another video focusing primarily on let and const, so consider subscribing and stay tuned for that one. So now let's jump into VS Code and create some variables. Alright guys, so let's declare a few variables now. So as we saw in the slide, we need the first 2 stages, which is the keyword and the name. So the keyword here is var, and we're just going to name this one x, and then close it off. Now we've declared a variable called x, so we're going to do one more and say variable y, and close that off. So we've declared 2 variables here, but the values of these variables are undefined, and they're essentially just empty vessels. So now we need the third step, and that's to assign it some data. Now to assign a variable a value, we use the assignment operator or the equals sign. So what I'm going to do now is go underneath each of these empty variables of x and y and assign them a number. So first we're going to do x. So we're going to say x, assignment operator or the equals sign, and we're going to give it a value of 10. And then we're going to go underneath y and do the same thing. So y equals 15. So now we've completed the 3 stages. So we've declared the variable x here and then given it a value of 10. And to check if this is working, we're just going to log it in to the console. So we're going to put in x first. And if you look in the browser, you see it's working. It's showing us the value of 10, which we've given it here. And then we'll try y. And you can see now we've also got a value of 15. Now there's another way we can write this out. So the way we've done it here is we first declared it and then assigned it. But we can do this all in one line. So essentially what we do here is assign data to a variable during its declaration. So we're going to do the exact same thing as above. So we're just going to say var x, and then we use the assignment operator, and then we give it a value of 10, and then close this off. And now essentially what we've done here is just put this all in one line here. So we're going to do the same for y. So we're going to say var equals 15, close that off, and I'm just going to comment these out so we know it's working. So we're going to put x, and it will give us 10, and we'll put y, and it should give us the value 15. Now what we can also do is have multiple variables in one line or chain together. So we're going to go underneath this one. We're going to use different letters this time. So we're going to say A, B, C. So now we've declared it. So now we just need to assign it some values. Now similar to how we put this all in one line, we can also put multiple variables in one line. Now the way we write this out would be var, so A equals 5, comma, separate it, B equals 10, comma to separate it, then C equals 15, close that off, and then we do the same thing in here. A, so it should give us 5, B for 10, and C 15. Now what we can also do with variables in JavaScript is that we can evaluate simple mathematical expression and assume its value. So we can add all 3 of these up together. So what I'm going to do is create one more variable, add up, and this is going to equal, we're just going to put the variable of add up, and it gives us the number 30. So 15 plus 10 plus 5 is 30, and that's how we can use mathematical expressions in JavaScript. So another important aspect of variables, guys, is naming them. So while we're naming our variables in JavaScript, it's important to keep the following rules in mind. So it's not really good practice to use reserved keywords such as var or let or const. It's because it can get a bit confusing later on. You can also see in VS Code that it already shows an error. It's also invalid to have JavaScript names that start with a number or certain symbols, but there are symbols that you can start your name with, so the pound sign or the underscore, these are perfectly fine. Also keep in mind that JavaScript is case sensitive, so these two variables here are completely different even though they have the same name. Now more valid variables are these type of variables. Now typically when you're naming your variables it should start with a lowercase string like you see in these ones, and names can also contain a mixture of upper strings or lowercase strings and numbers, so you see in these two examples here. Now the example that you see here, so if you're writing out two words, you can't separate these, you have to keep them together, and usually starting with a lowercase string and the next letter should start with an uppercase. And this type of writing is called camel case, and this is considered the best way to name your variables. And that's it for this 5-Minute Fridays, guys. I hope now you learn what JavaScript variables are and how you declare and assign variables, and are now confident in creating your own. And if you do like the content, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next 5-Minute Fridays.